Well, I'm with John Young, who used to be here but now lives in Alderney. Tell us a bit about your background. What were you doing when you were here? I remember when you were Chief Planning Officer or the Chief of the Planning Office, and you're doing something similar in a smaller scale in Alderney, presumably.
Yes, after failing to get elected in the senatorial elections, not by much, but by enough, I decided that I would go and put some efforts into a new role, and I wrote to Alderney, who I've been a frequent visitor, and offered my services, and they were they employed me from May. I've been up there now full time, working on as their planning department.
You wouldn't think a little island like Alderney, population less than 2,000, needs much planning, would you?
Well, it's about buildings and providing for people's needs and basic infrastructure and so on. So as the only person in that area of work, obviously I've been really had to deal with a lot of issues at both at the grassroots level, helping individual people with their problems, and also big policy issues for the states. So that's been about 7 months, but I've not cut off my connections from Jersey. I've been travelling back every fortnight. And obviously I'm on a short-term contract.
Is it possible to do a scale-up version, a community like that, less than 2,000 people, Jersey population 100,000 people? Does it relate, the size of the administration there, to what we've got here? Can you just draw a vertical graph and then say, this is how it's going to be, 10, 20, 30, 50?
Well, that's an interesting question. I think what you see in Alderney is the ultimate in small is beautiful. I think the civil service there is very small, and people are used and stretched to the full, and the budget.
Do people wear different hats? Is it many people doing?
Yes, they do. Yeah. In the community, I don't think there's talk of retirement, because if one is capable of doing work, then you're invited and opportunities to do so, providing it can be funded, of course. That's the big issue in Alderney, is the limitations of the economy, which, from having spent 7 months up there, are nothing to do about the people there, who are lovely people. It's the transport links. The transport links are the key to the Alderney economy. We've
got a little picture of Alderney up there. It's one of the few, I think it's the only commercial railway line in the Channel Islands, isn't it?
Well, it's run by a lovely little charity, and it's a huge piece of fun for tourists, very, very popular. So it runs bank holiday weekends and so on, weekends. And they run it entirely voluntarily, and that's very much the spirit of Alderney. People do things voluntarily, and they do it for the good of other people. But full-time residents, I think we're about in Alderney 1,600 souls. Right. And of course, the interesting thing is that the people pay their income tax to Guernsey. And one of the things that has surprised me, talking to young people, is that those young people who are born or brought up, educated in Alderney, and pay their taxes to Guernsey, are unable to live in Guernsey under the law, which I've been really surprised about.
You can't have a conversation about the channel without referring to the occupation. The fact is, Alderney was depopulated pretty much for the occupation. A lot of the people who live there now have got very little association historically with Alderney, I take it.
Well, I'm not au fait, obviously, on the depth of Alderney's history, having been out there 7 months, but obviously the evidence of the occupation is all around you, and it is still a very, very sensitive and controversial subject. The areas that I'm most involved with is documenting and the artifacts, of which are vast numbers all over the island, and trying to do what can be done under the land use plan to have those protected. Obviously, one of the most controversial projects is the Lager Stilt, which was the SS camp, and the designation of that as an ancient monument, under the Ancient Monuments Law.
Well, obviously it's always difficult to turn something with such a horrific origin into a tourist activity, if that's what's being...
Well, there are a lot of people active in Alderney on that. There's a great deal of interest in Alderney's occupation, a great deal of interest in Alderney's history, military history, with the Napoleonic forts, which they're absolutely mind-blowing. Those that haven't been there should go and have a look at them. They're as structurally as sound as what they were when they were built, but they're magnificent. It's like having 13 fort regents.
Well, there is a structure which keeps appearing on the local television, which is approved for development is something, or something that was going to be a great research place for environmental things or bird watching or something. It was a big building.
Well,
I don't know what's happened to that now.
Well, that's Fort Torgey.
Fort
Torgey is a magnificent fort.
Right.
It's typical of Alderney that there are huge huge opportunities there to do something in a modern use, put those structures which are still intact to a modern use. But of course, everything depends on economic viability, which relates critically to the transport links. And it's the number one message that I've really picked up. Jersey is so fortunate with its transport links.
On a good day.
The link between tourism and transport links is crucial. And Alderney, of course, is dependent upon services provided by its parent, if you like, Guernsey, who own Alderney Airlines, and it's a subject of great controversy in the island.
You have got one activity which is about to happen, or is likely to happen, which will be a great producer of wealth for Alderney, about the energy and so on, from the tidal thing. But in a word, is the Alderney economy, population, is it in decline at the moment?
Well, it certainly has experienced depopulation. Whether it's at the bottom is open to argument. I think myself that my impression it's at the bottom, but I can tell you this: people are doing their utmost in all walks of life to bring that population up to a viable level, because it certainly needs to be up in around the 2,100, 2,200 as a minimum. There's others with a view that it should be up a bit higher in order to make things economically self-sustaining island, but at the moment the 1,600 is too low to support the local businesses and activities.
It does have a relationship with Guernsey, symbiotic, parasitic. I don't know. You tell me. What is it? Is it?
Well, I wouldn't want to use pejorative language. At the moment, Alderney depends on Guernsey very much, and there is strong efforts being made by the politicians of both islands to plan for the future of the two islands together, where a more different financial situation can be achieved. At the moment, when I looked at the states of Alderney accounts, they get about 1.9 million off the states of Guernsey in revenue support. That comes into the accounts, and also obviously they run the education and the health service facility in Alderney.